Instagram regularly recommends sexual videos to teenage accounts that appear interested in racy content. That's according to testing conducted by the Wall Street Journal over 7 months. And that's not all. The accounts the journal tested, which were listed at 13 years old, were shown racy content within minutes of first logging on, and once the teen accounts showed interest in the racy videos, they were recommended even edgier content, including from adult sex content creators. According to the journal, internal testing and analysis previously conducted by Meta itself produced similar results. This is all after Meta announced back in January that it was shifting its approach to teen accounts and would automatically place them on the most restrictive content control settings under the new policy. Accounts under 16 weren't supposed to see any sexually explicit content.
Meta spokesperson Andy Stone said in a statement that the testing conducted by the journal was, quote, an artificial experiment, and suggested that it doesn't match the reality of how teens use Instagram. He also added, quote, we're committed to constantly improving and have dedicated teams focused on helping ensure teens see age-appropriate content on Instagram, including when they first join the platform. Interestingly, the journal found that similar tests done on Snapchat and TikTok didn't produce the same sexualized content for underage users. I think it's shocking that they believe teens don't use the app like this. People going through puberty, these hormone monsters. It's a normal, natural process, nothing to be ashamed of. But I think that you're mistaken to think that a teenager wouldn't use an app in this way, especially when it seems that there was no prompting done to elicit the original content they were shown. Yes, they interacted with it to see what would happen, but I think the onset is not something that was addressed in that statement there of as soon as you log in, even though they know your age, you're getting this content. I think the rise of OnlyFans creators being influencers and using their social media platforms as influencers to solicit people subscribing is akin to being advertised pornography. That's what it is. And so should a teen be shown that account, or should it only be for people over the age of 18? I believe the latter should be the case.
I completely agree. And we talked, I think it was last week or the week before, about the similar problem happening on Twitter/X, where they have now explicitly allowed pornographic content to proliferate on that platform. And there's not a great system in place to prevent anyone from seeing it if they don't want to. There's not like a switch you can toggle. Creators are technically supposed to tag their content as 18 plus, but most of them don't. So you don't even have to click on the image to see what's being promoted there. And it's the same thing. It's OnlyFans creators, people trying to sell their content, their sexually explicit content, and it's everywhere. And Instagram has long had a problem with how they deal with teenage accounts, because some of them who are under 13 have custodial accounts created by their parents, which are then quickly followed by admitted pedophiles who, according to a New York Times investigation, would blackmail some of these parents into sending them clothes that belong to the children or sending them additional pictures of, they have these group chats where they take pictures off of Instagram that could be considered sort of on the edge of appropriate versus inappropriate, and share them in their group chat with other people who are attracted to children who are pedophiles. And it's just unfortunate that we have social media companies that are more interested in engagement and advertisers and making a profit than in protecting children from sexually explicit content and grooming.
I think they could do something like YouTube does, where they, when you upload a video, ask you, is this suitable for children? Is this intended for children? And you say no. I think that could be something Instagram could implement for their users. If they don't want to use an algorithm, and I would understand, why an algorithm wouldn't be sufficient, because a bikini photo is different from lingerie, but to a computer, they might look very similar and not be able to tell that difference. But there's also a difference between a bikini photo and like a bikini photo.
Yeah.
And so can a computer determine what we can assess from the vibes? Is this sexual content, or is this someone having fun on vacation, sharing their life with their friends? I think social media should ask you and verify your identity in the same way that all of the dating apps do. You have to show your license and it has to match your face. I think having anonymous accounts is a problem, but I also think it gets in the way of age verification. And so I think age verification is important to really ensure these users are not exposed to sexual content too early. Of course, as you said, the inverse is also a problem of parents deciding to sexualize the content of their children and profit off of that industry. It's just really gross that that's even a thing. But all of the users would probably like if there weren't anonymous troll accounts. They would probably like it if their kids were not confronted with this kind of content. And I'm sure a lot of the, OnlyFans girls influencing on Instagram probably don't want young kids to be seeing their content. They can't afford probably the subscription, so it has no use really for them. There's no reason they should see it.
This is interesting in the context as well of some states cracking down on pornographic websites through age verification measures. Kentucky was the latest to do this, and Pornhub restricted access in that state earlier this month. We've also seen similar moves in Indiana, Idaho, and Kansas, and then just across the Potomac River in Virginia. And because they require the age verification, Pornhub and other top pornographic websites have said, well, we would have to basically collect people's IDs, and we're not interested in doing that because if there's a data breach, then everyone's information and potentially what they were watching could be exposed, which is similar to what happened in the Ashley Madison leak. But at the same time, like, your ID is already connected to so many of your social media accounts. And I think the alternative of allowing children to get access to pornographic websites without some kind of barrier in place, and for a lot of pornographic websites have been found to have uploaded content that is from trafficked victims or victims who are underage, because they don't really have a great age verification process for the performers in the amateur content as well. So for me, I'm like, okay, great, then don't operate there. Like, if you're not committed to protecting children and making sure that the content you're putting on your platform is of people who are actually of age, then I don't want you to be able to be in the state anyway. Like, I'd rather you just leave. But at the same time, it's like, okay, so Virginia, you can't go to a pornographic website, but you can go to Twitter. And now with the way that Twitter operates, it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah, I am afraid of data breaches always. We have to be. But I do believe in the age of the internet, it's allowed for people to exist in a social way or do things that they wouldn't do without it. You can be really anonymous in your behavior online. That didn't exist before the internet in the same way. There was always a risk that whatever you did, someone could see you. And so I think when we're online, we should behave the same way, because a lot of these data breaches have already happened. But I do understand this concern of there are very hateful people who don't like gay men, and there's concerns about, like, what if there was a data breach of Grindr and someone wanted to intentionally and systematically, retaliate against gay men because of who they are. That's really scary that that's something people even have to be afraid of. And so that concerns me, but I think we have a lot more to gain from investing in cybersecurity and strengthening it and requiring the identification on social media, than we have to fear of these data breaches to protect all of our children. And it would be a better online experience if everyone had their real ID attached to their accounts. They probably wouldn't anonymously say very hateful things to one another. I think the anonymity of being an online person has resulted in a lot of antisocial behavior, just people doing things and treating other people in a way they wouldn't if they didn't have it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I definitely connect the rise, according to New York Times investigation, into like really bizarre kinks and online communities as an outgrowth of anonymous online activity. At the same time, like as you said with the Grindr example, I'm really concerned about the criminalization of online speech. And there's a great many of reasons why people might want to be anonymous on social media for posting content or ideas. When we see now a case in front of the Supreme Court that accuses the Biden administration of cracking down against people who were skeptical of the administration's pandemic response at Murphy v. Missouri. And we have seen evidence that the Biden administration was directly communicating with social media companies to tell them what content to censor. And now we've seen the DOJ show up at the homes of a Texas doctor and a nurse who were whistleblowers in regards to the Texas Children's Hospital's treatment program for children with gender dysphoria, which they were doing after the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, had sent a memo saying that it could be likened to child abuse, and then Texas passed a law banning those procedures. And one of them has since been indicted. The doctor has been indicted and been accused of violating HIPAA, which is, I mean, we don't have time to get into all the details of the case, but it's very suspect. And so the idea that people are going around and like trying to figure out who sources are for articles or trying to determine what email address is connected to a social media account and then potentially sending the feds to your house because they didn't like what you said online is a very terrifying prospect. And it's one of the reasons why Nikki Haley in the presidential primary got a lot of flack, because she suggested this ID system, and people pointed out, like, your party is one that has been talking about social media censorship for a long time, and you're kind of advocating for a system that would potentially lead to the further repression of conservative ideas.
There's also this issue of why would a social media company keep that data and information? You only need it initially to verify an ID. When you walk into the bar and they check if you're 21, they don't write down all of your information. They don't put your ID in their pocket. They have no reason to store that data. They store that data because it's profitable and they can sell that data, and no one's regulating them doing that. It's an industry that shouldn't exist. All they need is someone who verifies that the face matches the ID, their software that can do this automatically, and then you don't need to store their address anywhere. There shouldn't be a risk of having your ID verified and then later on there's a data breach, and because they stored your data, which they should not have, now you can get doxxed, now you can have this retaliation. And so the fact that these companies keep data when they get it and don't just use it for its initial intended purpose is something that consumers need rights around, that users of these apps need rights around. It's something that maybe should be criminalized if companies are doing this.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a huge part of the problem, is that these data breaches wouldn't be possible if there were no personal information available in the back ends of these websites.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to continue to follow this, but we're going to leave this one here. More Rising after this.